Hello, everybody. Okay, just waiting. Oh, no internet. Jeez. How come this is not going? Streaming. Okay, I'm on Facebook and now I'm just waiting for YouTube. Okay, 24. Here we go. It's not letting me see the chat. Now, why is that? Okay. That is weird. Okay, so tonight is going to be in English. Ce soir, ça va être en anglais, mais on a un sous-titre français. Puis c'est pour ça que j'espère que les gens là, français, vous allez rester. Parce que c'est à propos de l'autodétermination et la décolonisation. Alors, c'est très important bon, que tout le monde soit ici. Là. Un instant. Je dois juste réarranger mes choses. Puis là, je vais voir si je suis bien sur Facebook. OK. Alors, donnez-moi juste une seconde et je reviens. Ah ben, vous allez, là, je ne peux pas savoir là, si vous pouvez me le dire ou non. Ça ne me donne absolument rien ici. Là. Je ne sais pas comment se fait que ça ne fonctionne pas, le chat. Alors, c'est bizarre. Très, très, très bizarre. Et là, on va se rendre sur Facebook. OK. Ah, can't see newsfeed. OK. Bon, je sais que je devrais avoir des gens là. So anyways, là, je vais continuer en anglais. So anyway, I'm just making sure that I am on Facebook. I can see that there's some people there, but my program is giving me a hard time. And hopefully my internet isn't too slow. Yes, okay, you're on Facebook. Great, I'm seeing this. All right. Okay, so we will discuss self-determination and decolonization. And because that is exactly what we are launching for everybody. If you believe that you have rights in this country and you want to be able to establish those rights, we have a chance for the first time in history since our rights have been stolen from us, our political and civil rights, since 1931, and then again in 1982 with the Trudeau coup d'etat, Trudeau daddy, that is Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So we're going to be showing you a short video, 13 minutes. And Nikki explains this very, very well. Hopefully they'll be able to join us in Ottawa on Saturday and Sunday of July 30th with her team to explain some things for you. But they've been going around worldwide and talking about self-determination and decolonization. However, I know up to 2019, it was mostly about the self-determination. And now she's, really is talking about the fact that, yes, everybody can decolonize together. And a country like Canada or Australia or New Zealand, where we have here Canadian citizens and Indigenous nations, we need to unite so that we can get this done. And this is why one of the things that the Canadian government has done and ensured is to keep the Indigenous nations separate from the Canadian citizens, in the sense that if we unite, then they have no standing power. We are the ones who own our political and civil rights, who are the actual shareholders, co-owners of the Crown of Canada. The government acts for us on our behalf, and we vote for them every 4 years. However, 1931 and 1982, we were never given the full rights, only pretend rights, and that the government can take away at any time. So now it's time to activate that and to place the people back in power. And we can do this in every other country as well. This is all based on our rights through international law, through English law, and our laws are based on that. Other than what the Canadian government tried to hide and create fake laws or bogus laws that really go against our rights, everybody has to learn what those rights are so that we can move forward. And really, this is our country. We own it. We are responsible for it. We are also responsible for our government. And we need to do something about this. And ça presse en bon français. So what we're going to be doing is showing you the 13-minute video. And we're going to have the French translation at the bottom. So for those who don't like to see the writing at the bottom, also mixed in with the Facebook writing, please click on CC and click off. And then you won't be bothered with the English coming back on top of it. So now I'm going to explain it in French. Alors, on va montrer un petit vidéo là, de 13 minutes, s'il vous plaît, ayez patience, parce que c'est en sous-titre, puis on ne l'a pas en français, là, malheureusement, mais au moins que le sous-titre, ça va vous donner une bonne idée, c'est au niveau de l'autodétermination et la décolonisation, et qu'est-ce qu'il faut qu'on fasse comme Canadiens. C'est pour ça que nous, on a toujours travaillé là-dessus au niveau du niveau collectif. Alors, quand vous voyez la jeune fille parler, vous allez voir que notre solution est qu'est-ce qu'eux autres ont attendu pour toutes ces années-là au niveau de l'autodétermination. Parce que vraiment, ils ont fait le focus au niveau là, individuel et tout ça. Puis au niveau de juste les Autochtones, le gouvernement a essayé de les jouer trop souvent. Puis ça l'a arrivé dans tous les pays. Là. Mais alors, tous les pays peuvent faire comme nous. C'est ça qui est important de savoir. C'est parce qu'on a déjà ces droits-là. On a juste à les exercer et c'est pour ça qu'on fait notre événement, qu'on veut que tout le monde soit compté sur la Convention civile, en signant votre Convention civile, ça c'est par papier, et aussi en venant nous joindre au Parlement le 30 juillet. Puis aussi là, dans toutes les provinces à travers le Canada. Si vous ne pouvez pas venir, s'il vous plaît, arrangez-vous avec d'autres citoyens. Faites quelque chose de spécial dans votre ville et laissez-nous le savoir. Puis on va faire un genre de live stream là-dessus et montrer vos live streams que vous allez faire et vos photos et vidéos, etc. OK? Pour montrer là, à l'international que oui, les citoyens veulent être en charge de leur pays et non de laisser un gouvernement tout vendre, tout donner et ensuite nous traiter comme des esclaves. Alors, si vous croyez dans votre liberté, s'il vous plaît, restez, parce qu'une liberté sans avoir le droit au-dessus de notre gouvernance n'est pas une liberté. OK? C'est une fausse liberté. Alors, c'est ça qu'il faut qu'il change, là, c'est ça qu'on va expliquer. Mais là, on a un bon petit vidéo pour en anglais. So anyways, what I was trying to say is that please have patience and learn everything that you can and really listen to what this young woman is saying because they were focused on self-determination and decolonization on the Indigenous level. And now it's everybody. And this is what we've been working on since 2014 was the collective self-determination because we need both Indigenous and Canadians to come together and to actually launch our rights to our collective rights to political and our civil rights in the decolonization process and self-determination. So we're going to be launching this through our Citizens Convention of Consent that we've already been using since 2014. It's a living document. It just keeps going. Don't worry about the dates on there. It'll take as much time as it needs to be able to access and get everybody in Canada to understand what we are doing and to finally stand in your power. We already have those rights. We are already recognized as the final decision makers in a sense. However, we give that right to the government. So anyway, since 1960, it's been actually, how can I say, automatic that yes, we do have those rights. Those belong to us and nobody else. And, you know, there's two ways of doing this for us. One by signing your convention of consent and showing up on Parliament Hill, and then or in your city, and then forcing the UK government to do a constitutional correction. Okay, not an amendment, correction. Let's use the right words here, because since 1960 and even 1931, we had the right to be the final decision makers. Actually, we are the ones to be recognized as the sovereign people holding a corporation, which is the Crown Corporation of Canada, and that we do have, you know, we're supposed to have a CEO and all that working for us, but Justin Trudeau is not the CEO, not by a long shot. It's basically the whole political party. So as much as you want to blame Justin Trudeau, you have to blame all Liberals, okay? And every other party that has not divulged this information to you are also guilty as sin of keeping the lies since 1931. So whether they knew about it or not, if they didn't know about it, they have no business in politics. So now it's up to us to take the lead, all of the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples across Canada getting together on each side of the two-row wampum as equal partners in this country. And hopefully we'll be able to get the message across sooner than later, and that everybody will join us, and that the Canadian government also has to help us financially to reach all Canadians once we launch this officially. Like something like, letting us use Canada Post, and also financing it. So we want to do a legal collective self-determination and decolonization with the Indigenous nations, as well as making sure that the United Nations and the rapporteurs and everybody, both for decolonization and self-determination or political and civil rights, are there and watching everything and making sure that the government, because the government is not allowed to stop us, the government can do nothing about this. It is our legal right to do so, and it's up to us to do it properly, not to cause any chaos. While we're doing this, things have to still run. However, the Canadian government, once that is done, July 30th, should be forced to stop any negotiations whatsoever until we have our proper designation recognized in our Constitution and in our rights, and then they will no longer have final decision-making authority. They will have to give us referendums, and that's up for all the people to decide, so it could take some time. However, we can stop whatever we don't like that's happening, and making sure that investigations are had and that everybody's protected, because it is the right of everybody to do so. And on a final note, public health needs to also understand that the World Health Organization does not have the right to supersede our human rights to say no, and they can't force us, and neither can employers. So now employers will have to really know the law, really see their lawyers, because with the documents that we have, they need to get on board with Canadian citizens and stop the insanity that's been going on by trampling over everybody's rights under pandemics or even a war. So even if we were at war, they wouldn't be able to do that, and neither with corporations. So now the Canadian government was using corporations against the people. It is an intellectual war. It is a war for our country, in the sense that they are not communicating with us properly. Just doing a survey does not cut it. It's our country. It's up to us to maintain it. It's up to us to protect it. And we're going to keep fighting. We're not going to stop this. And it's going to keep going until everybody understands that you are a shareholder, co-owner of the Crown of Canada. You need to act, not just sign the Convention of Consent. You need to also communicate with everybody and start getting educated on what our government actually does. Okay, because we're not taking out the government there. Okay, like we're not doing that, because our system actually works great. It's the political system that stinks. It's who robs us of our rights that stinks. And that's something that we need to fix. And we can only fix it by activating our political and civil rights from ourselves to the collective. Okay, so we have to all come together and activate those things. Otherwise, nothing will change. Okay, no political party will be able to do what we're going to be doing July 30th. So we need to do it now, and we need to make sure that everything stops in its track before September. So please be there. The government can't stop us. We are in our legal rights, and we own this country, and it's time that they all understand that, and that they learn our rights, and then see what rights they have. Because I'll tell you, we hold all the power, okay? Under any circumstance, no fear, okay? We've done everything that is humanly possible to debate those rights. We were ready to debate them. And as long as we claim our political and civil rights, they can't stop us from talking about them. They can't stop us from discussing laws, which laws we should take, which ones we shouldn't, or which way to go. We have the right to collectively get together and have these discussions, whether online or offline, it doesn't matter. We are always exercising our political and civil rights at all times, even in our sleep, people. Okay, so now I'm going to continue to the video. Okay, hopefully we have enough people around and that I won't lose you halfway. So I'm going to do a screen share. I'm just going to make sure that I'm on the right page here because I did flip around a little bit. Freaking out because I couldn't see you guys chatting, and now there we go. And please listen carefully. And again, if you don't like to see the language at the bottom in English overriding the French one, because we need to have the French one for the French speaking people, just click on CC and remove the just click on off and one will disappear. Okay, thank you.
Piali, Kwalitanetzik, Niatoka, Nicola Halika Sanchez Hood, Nimaya Pipil, and Kuskatlan. I'm so happy to be with all of you here today. What a special thing to come together to learn. Thank you so much to the Nahanni family for their beautiful welcome to their territories. Because I'm speaking to you about decolonization today, I couldn't begin without once again recognizing that not only are we on the territories of this beautiful family, but we're also on the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish Nations territory. And although that's become a really common thing to acknowledge in Canada, that you're on someone else's territory, what often goes unsaid is that those are unsurrendered and occupied territories. So some of us might be here today as guests, and some of us have found our way here in other ways, but ultimately, we're on someone else's territory, and so I really invite you to think about what that means as we explore this idea of decolonization. And as a decolonial educator, I get to have a lot of really interesting conversations with people, often really difficult conversations. But to my surprise, one of the most difficult conversations I have, one of the most difficult questions that I ask is if people can name the territories and nation on whose lands their grandmothers were born. And for a lot of settler Canadians, this is a really difficult question to answer. And it's also one that brings up a lot of pain. And that's where I want to start this conversation today, is around this notion of colonization in relation to historical amnesia. Because although it's become a common theme in Canada that we talk about intergenerational trauma for Indigenous people, one thing that's not talked about is the intergenerational trauma that's also had to happen for settler people to be complicit in such a violent history. And in order for us to know where we want to go together, we need to know where we are, and for us to know that, we need to know where we've been. So I'm just going to speak briefly about the history of colonization in Canada, but I really want to emphasize this is a global phenomenon. There's not a single corner of the world that colonization hasn't been enacted upon. So whether you're a settler Canadian, whether you're a visitor, whether you're a newly landed immigrant, this applies to you. And if you want to learn more about your own particular history, just go home and Google colonization and your nation, and you'll see a long and violent history. But for today's purposes, we're just going to talk about colonization in Canada. And so one of the most common things that people are really aware of in terms of our colonial legacy in Canada is that of residential schools. However, what's often left out of that conversation is the fact that those residential schools were in effect for over 150 years, that the last residential school did not close until 1996, that the mortality rate in those residential schools was often around 50%, that the Canadian government intentionally used the subjects of those schools to test the impacts of starvation on human bodies, as well as the impacts of electric chairs. The creation of the RCMP was in fact to remove children from their homes in order to bring them to these schools, as well as to police Indigenous people to remain on the lands that were designated to them as reserve lands in their own home territories. And finally, this legacy resulted in the kidnapping of over 150,000 children. And that's just the children themselves that were removed. And that's not even talking about all of the generations that were implicated because of the horrible abuse that went on in these schools. So the other forms that colonization took in this country were that of biological warfare, intentional, systematic biological warfare. 90% of some of the First Nations in British Columbia were wiped out at a time when a vaccine for smallpox was available and well used among settler Canadians. This is, I think, one of the most powerful pictures that depicts the history of colonization in this country. Another strategy that was used to clear people from the land and force people into submission, into capitalism, into living on reserves, was the intentional extinction of keystone species like the buffalo in the prairies. But this happened in the north with sled dogs, it happened in the east coast with different fisheries. And so this strategy of extinction to force people into submission is part of our colonial history in Canada. So this means that if you're more than a first-generation Canadian, this is historical bystander trauma that your parents and grandparents have lived through, and that in fact also lives in you. And I really want to dispel this myth today that decolonization is the work of Indigenous people. Whether you have ancestors that were colonizers or colonized, we are all colonized people. And so this work of decolonization is really work that we need to come together to do with one another, equally accepting our roles, our locations, our privileges, in ways in which we can start to move towards a future that looks like healing, that looks like justice, that looks like dismantling systems of oppression. So I'd be very happy if I could say that this historic colonization is where it ends, but unfortunately that's not the case. Today, colonization in Canada looks like the fact that we're here occupying someone else's territory. Well, there's never been treaties made or honored, at least on these territories. It looks like over 4,000 missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this country, a number that keeps on rising despite government promises of an inquiry or an intervention. It looks like common practices such as the apprehension of Indigenous babies when they're born by Child and Family Services if their families are deemed unfit by the state. It looks like over 200 First Nations who live without access to clean drinking water and other forms of infrastructure that almost every other Canadian feels entitled to. And finally, it looks like the ongoing poisoning and removal of Indigenous people from their traditional lands and territories for resource extraction processes like the tar sands and like one we're all probably very familiar with right here, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I've worked with a lot of settler people who really want to do something about this, but they don't know where to begin. And they feel paralyzed with guilt and shame about this truly ugly history that we've all found ourselves in. And so if I could just leave you with one message today, it would be this. This history is not your fault, but it absolutely is your responsibility. What happened, what has been done is not your fault, but where we find ourselves here together, whether we're Indigenous people, whether we're settler people, whether we're somewhere in between, this is work that we need to pick up. We need to have the courage to look at our past. We need to have the courage to look at where we are now, and we need to work together to figure out how we can collectively heal moving forward. I think it's really important to make the distinction between indigenization and decolonization. As Nigel mentioned, I had the incredible privilege of working on the Viceland documentary series Rise, and in that role I got to work with Indigenous communities in every continent of the world. And I want to give a shout out to all the Indigenous people on Earth, because the work of indigenization, the work of linguistic revitalization, the work of ceremony, the work of land-based practice, the work of land-based defense, Indigenous people are holding it down. And that is work for Indigenous people to do. That is not work for anyone else to pick up and start to appropriate and call their own. However, decolonization is work that belongs to all of us. Decolonization. We are never going to go back and erase the past. It has already been done. But what we can do is we can start to put spokes and wheels of oppression, of movements that create our social systems of inherent inequity. And to be totally honest, if you wanted to just be motivated to do this for selfish reasons, that would be good enough. We're looking at a state of global climate catastrophe. We're looking at mass migrations because people can no longer inhabit their homelands. And these are all ramifications of a colonial and capitalist worldview that eradicated a balance, a sense of reciprocity, a sense of spiritual connection to our homelands. And so if we continue forward without acknowledging the Indigenous people on whose lands and territories we live, we're headed for certain disaster. One of the biggest gifts I've ever been given in my life is the gift of my own prophecy, the Mayan prophecy, which speaks about this time particularly on Earth. And it teaches us that this is the time, for the first time in all of human history, that our consciousness have come to a level of evolution where we can actually see from one another's eyes. The way that it's explained is that the eyes of the serpent can see through the eyes of the eagle. And so the eyes of the north and the eyes of the south can actually see through one another's eyes and begin to work together and understand each other's worldviews. And the secondary part of that prophecy is that absolutely every person who came to be alive on Earth at this time came for a specific reason and came with specific gifts that are needed to do this work that we have laid out in front of us. And I really believe that. And that's why I really want each of you to pick up this work of decolonization as your own, because we need you. Whether we like it or not, colonization is a messy and shameful history that connects us all. Here we are all in this room together. So what do we do moving forward? When people ask me, what can I do to decolonize? I give them a caveat and I tell them, well, that's not going to be a one answer. It's not going to be a one-day fix. However, I can give you a few first steps, because if you do your work, then we can come back together and collectively do the real work that needs to be done. So if you want to go home today and start to enact your journey of decolonization, you can figure out how to answer that first question I said to you. Where do your people come from? How did you get here? Learn whose land you live on and what has been done to them in order for you to occupy their lands. Address the oppressive systems and history that enable you to occupy the territory you do now. Find out how you benefit from this history and activate one strategy wherein you can use your privilege to dismantle that. And share this knowledge, share this conversation with your barista, with your babysitter, with your Tinder date. I don't care. But I want you to have these conversations. And I promise you, when you start to have these conversations of looking at a longer now, of asking the history of people, your world will suddenly become a lot more interesting. And so will your identity. Finally, what's it all for? Why should we do this? Well, because decolonization looks like living without paralyzing guilt and shame about who you are and the social identity you've inherited. Decolonization looks like giving up social and economic power and privilege that directly disempowers, appropriates, and invisibilizes others. Decolonization looks like smashing the patriarchy. Decolonization looks like doing the work to find out who you are, where you came from, and committing to build communities that work together to collectively create a more sustainable and equitable future. And finally, decolonization looks like celebrating who we are and connecting with the unique knowledge that we each bring to this time and that we need to solve the problems that are laid out in front of us. So it's really easy to think about our future ancestors because we have such beautiful little ones in the room. Good reminder. Thank you so much for opening this space today. But I really invite you to look back and think about your grandmothers that I asked you about and take a moment to look forward and ask yourself what you can do in your lifetime, what you can do today and in your work and with your passions and with your gifts to start to dismantle a history that none of us should be proud of, so that maybe we can offer an inheritance for our future ancestors for not only a planet that's livable, but a social system and community that's equitable and just. Last Kamadi, thank you so much.
Okay, and we're back. Stop share. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that, because the best way to be able to move forward and to protect our country is to unite. And we can't begin to unite until we honor or learn about the Tura Wampum Treaty and the Silver Covenant chain, which is the Friendship Treaty. And those two treaties, even though they're not about, land bases and whatnot, they are about morals, okay? So the government has been making sure that Canadian citizens do not know anything about this, and keeping the nations and the citizens from coming together. So this was all in for control of lands, control of both peoples, really. I mean, they can't deny that. I mean, the writing's on the wall. It's historical, it's there. You know, stealing our rights. Well, where does our privilege begin? Our privilege begins that as a collective, there's much that we can do. Okay. And understanding that Truro Wampum Treaty on July 30th is going to be vital, because we can't put the cart before the horse. We need to start understanding that in 1613, when first contact happened, like it happened way before, but at the same time, when it was recognized through treaty, it was 1613. Through the Truro was the Haudenosaunee peoples, which is the Mohawks, the Cayugas, the Oneidas, the Oneida, Cayuga, Onondaga, and Mohawks. And then you have the also the Tuscaroras and the Senecas. Okay, so I've got all 6 there. The Tuscaroras came a little bit later, and they were adopted into the 5 nations. So that's why here in Canada they call it the 6 nations. And you know, but historically it'll be the 5 nations that was written in the books. So to understand all this, 1613, the Dutch came, and then that treaty was made with them. And those treaties are about the two, you know, working together side by side. And then the Silver Covenant chain is attached. This was like the boat and the canoe attached, so that not one can go ahead of the other. And what the Dutch had said was, okay, well, let's use a silver chain. You know, well, at first it was just a rope, and they said, no, let's use they just said, no, let's use that chain. Okay, and that was a silver chain, because it doesn't really rot fast enough. So at least a rope can be cut and whatnot. So they want to make sure that that could never be trampled on. But the governments ever since did. They made the same treaty with the French and then with the English as time went along. And we can't begin reconciliation. We can't begin uniting with the Indigenous nations and get working together as equal partners until we Canadian people understand exactly what that meant. And as long as we don't understand what that means, we're not going to be able to go forward. We need to really understand that and respect it. And respect comes from both sides, okay? They also need to respect some of the ideas that we have or things that we do. But if we don't discuss these issues and have the hard conversations, we're never going to get through this. And we're both losing our country as we speak. We're losing our rights as we speak, them as much as we do. Treaties won't matter. It's about us being able to stop this, and we can only do that together legally. So legally, we need to unite, and we're already recognized as, you know, both the shareholders, co-owners of Canada. They have territories and we have territories as well. So we need to come together as one in our governance, but on each side of the Truro Wampum, and to make decisions in regards to our future together. We can't be one side making and forcing the other to do that, because now we know exactly how they felt. That if the last 2.5 years did not teach you anything, then I'm sorry, you will never understand how oppressed they were. Now, under the law of oppression, under political and civil rights and all this, or even under corporate rights, okay, the Indigenous nations, the way that it's done is that the Canadian government owes fiduciary duty to the Indigenous nations, because they came under their protection, the governance, okay, and in exchange for land and rights and whatnot. So we have a fiduciary duty to them. When I was going through my research, there was one judge from Australia, and he said, and he was making this think like, why does Canada not, you know, have fiduciary duty to the Canadian people, the government of Canada? And, you know, when I was reading all this stuff, it became very clear. Well, why would the government owe us fiduciary duty if they work for us? They do not owe us fiduciary duty because why? We rule. It's not on paper, but it's time that it gets on paper. And we can force that in the UK. There are 2 ways of doing this. And for getting the lawyers to really push the UK to give us a motion in Parliament. And that's just a vote in Parliament to say yes, because as we stand, the UK still has parliamentary sovereignty over our constitution. As long as it sits in the UK Parliament under their legislature as the Canada Act 1982, which combines our entire Charter of Rights and Freedom and Constitution, right up to 1867, the UK is still responsible. So they are very much responsible too for this fiasco. However, they did try to protect us, but it's up to the Canadian people to look into things. And if we don't, well, it's tough luck, baby. Okay. We've looked into things, but now we need you to react, not just sign a document and say you're okay. Now you've done your job and oh, you can pat yourself. No, it doesn't stop there. This is forever. This is the biggest corporation you will ever own in your lifetime if you decide to fight for it. How do we decide? How do we fight for it? We do it legally. There's nothing the Canadian government can do, and they have to give us all the assistance we need to change things the way we want to, but we need to be able to communicate. This will not be done overnight, people. Our constitution can be changed overnight, yes. One vote through the UK Parliament, recognized as the official shareholders, co-owners of the Crown of Canada, or of Canada, for us and the Indigenous peoples as equal shareholders in this country. Okay, co-owners and shareholders in this country. So I had a really good meeting tonight. I went and saw an old buddy there that I hadn't seen in a while, and he and his wife, and we spoke, Dennis and I, and the 4 of us, and we had a really good discussion. And the whole thing is that we're launching, and we need an Indigenous presence there as well, like we do with Barb, our director, one of our directors, and she is Cayuga, Haudenosaunee, and you know, but it's still not enough. We need to have that Indigenous nation presence in the UK, like I mean, in the legal action as well against to change our constitution. So under that action, I suggested that, you know, there's a lot of pressure that needs to be placed on there, and we need all the help we can get on our side and they on their side, but we need to come together and work. And also everybody gather in Ottawa, July 30th, come hell or high water. There's nothing more important than this date. This is historical. If we know that there's only 2 weeks left before the event, but everybody can get ready on a dime. I've seen them do it for any protest or whatever, but this is not a protest. This is about joining together and uniting and putting our egos aside and really learning to listen. Okay, not because I think we all have this disease. So when somebody speaks, we have 50 things going through our heads and we're not really listening, and we only have questions or you want to say something. So while you're thinking about what you want to say, you're not listening to what the person is saying. That's like watching a movie, you know, and saying, what's going to happen next? Why did they do that? Well, shut up and watch the movie. Listen. Okay. So anyway, we have a way of doing this. Everything's out there, and like Sebastien would say, we have it on the silver platter for all of you. All you need to do is take action. That's all you need to do. Go to the powershift.ca, start reading. I know some people hate to read, but you have a responsibility. You want your freedom? That comes at a cost. Your time, energy, and money. It comes at a cost. So unless you want the government to lock you down at $75 a week in groceries, and then they're going to start counting how much you're wasting, or you're not going to be able to get out of your home because we've got this pandemic and that pandemic. We need to see through the light here. And the people have the right to decide for themselves. The World Health Organization, public health, cannot override our human rights. We have that on our website. The city of Ottawa can't stop the people from coming in, and they can't have it look like World War II down there, or III, I should say. Okay, like a war zone. Neither can the federal government. We have political and civil rights, and they need to honor that. And they don't need to be treating our 5-year-olds in t-shirts and shorts and sandals like they're terrorists. So we need to act now. We need to do something, and the government needs to learn to back off. Okay, they need to back off, because we're going to do this, and it is our legal right. We have the right to do it, and we're going to keep at it until it gets done. But we need the people involved. We need funding. We need help in going door to door afterwards to be able to reach the people. So we're launching our official collective rights to self-determination and decolonization, because we are the final decision makers in this country, and we will determine what we do with our future, not the Canadian government. It's not their job. Okay, that's up to us. And you need to learn exactly how governance works to begin with, what the government has done. There are some good things, there are some bad things. We need to get rid of the bad things and continue the good things. We don't overthrow no government, nothing of that. What doesn't work will go out the door. We need referendums. We need community involvement. You need to be involved in every aspect of your life if you want to protect your freedom. You have to be involved in politics if you want to protect your freedom. The BS of everybody saying, oh, well, I hate politics. Well, you better damn well realize that when you're sleeping, what you're going to pay for a loaf of bread in the morning when you wake up is politics. Politics go hand in hand with the economy. It doesn't happen on, neither happen on their own. So it's up to us to clean this mess. And I'll be damned if we don't get it done. Whether you're part of it or not is neither here nor there. Whether you say, well, you didn't ask my permission, we already have those rights. We just need to show public interest in those rights. We're getting there, okay? We're getting there. But there are two ways of doing it. And if we have to, one way or the other will suffice. But in the end, if the UK doesn't step it up and act legally through law, then we'll have to go after them as well legally. And their people have the right to do the same thing. And that's why, they're probably ignoring us for a while there, but it'll come back, and our lawyer's getting ready. We'll be ready to move forward. And then we have our lawyer here. So we need to really organize the people, but the people have to organize themselves as well and take part. So welcome to your self-determination and decolonization as a Canadian citizen, a citizen shareholder, co-owner of the Crown of Canada. And that's why you're needed in Ottawa, July 30th. It's the most important day of your life for you, your children, and your future. Otherwise, stay home, do nothing. And if everybody does that, then you can kiss this country goodbye, and you'll only have yourself to blame. Okay. So whatever help you can offer, send us an email at contact@thepowershift.ca. If you want to organize in your communities for July 30th, please contact Richard at thepowershift.ca. If you want to help us financially, you can join the CPU and either take a $10 a month subscription or $120 for the year. That helps us to be able to keep moving and keep this done, and as well, help with our legal fees to keep this dream alive for you. So please dare to dream to a better way forward through honoring the Truro Wampum Treaty and the Silver Covenant Chain friendship with the Indigenous nations, uniting together as co-owners, shareholders of the Crown of Canada, okay, and the Crown corporations. So we can make this work. It won't be easy, but people have to put their egos aside. Whoever you were enemies with yesterday, forget that, okay? They too are a shareholder, co-owner of the Crown of Canada. Start communicating. Stop yelling. Stop being ahead of yourself. Start to listen. Because if we don't learn to listen, and we don't learn to communicate and to fix problems through solutions, none of us will deserve this country. If you're not ready to put in the work, put your money where your mouth is, and stop whining, you do not deserve this country. Time for action, baby. Okay. So anyways, I'm feeling really good tonight. I don't drink. I'm just high on energy and seeing that, yeah, this can be done, and there's no reason to get discouraged. There's no reason to have fear. Okay. I have zero fear because I would rather be dead than do anything than this. And I will not go anywhere that is more important than July 30th. Nothing in this life, not even my own son, is more important than July 30th. It's for his future and his family's future, same as your children and all the children in Canada and the Indigenous nations. How many times are we going to say we're sorry and nothing gets done? How many times have you heard that over your lifetime from every parliament? When it's all cheap words, cheap talk, okay? And fake crying, I don't buy it. So it's time to become responsible for our country. You want your freedom, it comes at a cost, and you better be ready to pay the price, because you need to be vigilant every day afterward, and make sure your children learn so that they will never give up their rights again, no matter how hard somebody tries to steal it. Okay. We're in our rights. The government knows it, and it better act like it knows it and make sure that it does not interfere. The international will be watching. We've got nothing to lose. Okay, so we move forward. Go to the powershift.ca. Like I said, you can join and get a membership, either a full membership or a standard one that you pay every month. You can also go to our Facebook page, and you'll be able to see that we also have a 2-row wampum belt and a silver covenant chain that is going to, they're just beautiful. I saw them, but they're getting engraved this week, and we should have them ready for you by Wednesday or Thursday. And we will be selling tickets at the powwow here on Six Nations, and hopefully getting everybody ready for Ottawa. And it should be very interesting. It's starting to be fun instead of nerve-wracking. So that's why I'm high on energy, because things are starting to really happen, which is good. And but you can buy your tickets online for the 2-row wampum. Whatever donation you give, it's your chance. You give to support what we're doing in Ottawa and all that. At every $5 that you give, let's say you gave $20, well, you'll get 4 tickets. You'll have 4 chances. Your name will be put in 4 times. Okay, the ticket that you're emailed through the number. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to need at least a couple of weeks to be able to, some people have given us $100, some 200. So we got to figure out all those tickets for them and write that, and then put them all together so that we can raffle them after. We are licensed under as a not-for-profit charity. We're allowed to do that. We're also going to be selling umbrellas in Ottawa with a message on there. We can't sell them at the hill or where there's security, but wherever the police will have, let's say they still keep it closed off anyway, we'll be establishing tables there with the umbrellas. We only have 300. Some are French and English, others are French or English, doesn't matter. It still gives out a really good message. so that people can be, if it rains, they'll have the umbrella. If it's too hot, they'll have the umbrella, but at the same time, it's like having a big postcard, okay? So anyways, we've got them, and you can see them on our Facebook page. If you go through our photos, you'll be able to see them. And we'll have those for sale to help defray costs. And hopefully, we'll be able to get more speakers in, but the speakers will be mostly reserved for Sunday and Monday. But Saturday is really the education for the Turo Wampum, and we'll have maybe hopefully one of these girls to speak as well on Saturday. But the main day for education and everything will be on the grounds at Parliament Hill all day Sunday, well, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Because at 5 p.m. We have to have everything off, because then the crowd for who want to watch there's a light show that begins at 10 p.m. but everybody can bring their lawn chairs and their blankets to Parliament Hill after 5 o'clock once we're done, or you can stay there, just put away your flags and watch the show, and then we're going to have an event for you on Saturday evening, but we're going to have limited capacity, so you're going to have to we're going to be making the tickets online that you can make sure to get. So it's going to be first come, first serve. And then the others, then at the door, we'll see whoever leaves. We might be able to let others come in, but we're limited to only 200 people for an event with all of us. And then in the evening, we're also going to be live streaming with the background of Parliament in the background in one of the rooms that we have in the Sky Lounge. So it should be very interested to watch the live streaming with some of the doctors that we'll have and all of the special guests in regards to what we're doing and where do we go from here. And like I said, this is not going to happen overnight, but at least after July 30th, we can put the brakes on for the government and all levels of governance, provincial, municipal, band council, everybody will then have to be very careful, tread lightly, because they won't be able to pass anything that, without us agreeing to it first, because it is our right, and they do not have that right. How can I say, without having it stolen from us, because they never explained that. They never did anything about it. Now it's time that we did. So our country, our responsibility, your children, their future is in your hands and this country. So we hope you're going to stand with us and have no fear and be happy about what we can do, because the sky's the limits. Okay. Together we can succeed. Thepowershift.ca. Thank you. Bye-bye.